Live from the Washington, D.C. area, it's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know now.
Welcome back. I'm Bettina Lawton, your host, and today we are talking about people in Fairfax County who are doing good for the people who are vulnerable in our society. Not everybody has the kind of advantages that many folks here do, and fortunately, there are people who care enough to take the time out of their busy day and their schedules to try and help the less fortunate. So we have with us Gary Levine. Now, Gary I know because he's a business guy, and that's how I know him. He is the president of WSI Webmark, which is a digital media marketing company. So Gary, I want to first of all welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
I appreciate you taking time out because I know you're busy running all over and doing these amazing media things. Every time I hear you give a presentation on social networking or content marketing, I walk away going, I didn't know that. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule to come.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's talk about the other way that you contribute apart from helping people achieve their business success, and that is as a board member of something called First Star. Right. Which is what? I'd never heard of First Star until you mentioned it.
First Star is an organization that was founded in 1999 to focus on issues surrounding abused and neglected children around the country. Mostly kids who are in the foster system because they've been abused or neglected and taken away from their natural families. And we started by doing advocacy work, doing legal work, trying to make the system more effective. And in the last few years, we've added a dimension of trying to change one of the more dismal statistics from that population, which is that while over 30% of kids from regular families will go on to get a four-year college degree, only 3% of the kids who come out of the foster care system will end up with a four-year degree. And that leaves them in an awfully vulnerable position as they go out into society.
Well, let me ask you about how long you've been involved with this. So First Star gets founded in '99. When did you get involved with it?
I got involved in 2011.
Okay.
A friend of mine had become the executive director, had called for some web advice, and I was too eager to give it. And so we ended up redesigning firststar.org, which became a repository of all sorts of information about the area. And it's been a labor of love ever since.
Well, I was on firststar.org in order to get ready to talk with you about First Star. And I was amazed at the amount of information that you can get on this subject. So I highly recommend to people to go to firststar.org if you're interested in abused and neglected children, because it has all kinds of reports on it. It also has a bunch of statistics on it that frankly are depressing. I must tell you, they were just horrible. Now, it does list the mission, which I thought was a great mission. I don't know who wrote the mission statement. But they improve the lives of America's abused and neglected children by strengthening their rights, illuminating systematic failures, and igniting necessary reform. I mean, it's a very kind of uplifting mission statement for what's a very difficult area.
Yes.
So you said you did this with legal matters. I mean, what does that involve? Is this like helping children who are in the system someplace?
We do join in certain cases as friends of the court and places where we think precedent needs to be changed. We write model laws that we recommend to state legislatures around the country. And we do research. We do a couple of report cards where we rank the states on how well they do against things like protecting children, transparency in the deaths and near deaths that take place within the system. And also providing legal rights to kids, but legal counsel to kids. Oddly enough, the state and the family are entitled to legal counsel, but in 39% of the states, the kids themselves are not entitled to legal counsel.
Really?
Yes. So they have ad litems that represent their best interest, but they're not necessarily lawyers, and they're not bound to represent the interest of the child. They're as the child wishes.
Wow.
They are to determine on their own what they think is in the best interest of the child. So the child has no voice really in many places.
I had no idea it was like that.
Yes.
Because it would seem natural to say, the state, the parents, and the kids. But on the other hand, I mean, this is Virginia. Although I read some of those reports, and Virginia didn't come out so badly.
No.
But a lot of people think, and I remember years ago with Marian Wright Edelman had the Children's Legal Defense Fund in Virginia, in DC is where it's located. And I remember years ago hearing people say, children don't have any legal rights. This is a bunch of, liberal wackos just trying to create, more special interests. And they were kind of defining children as a special interest, and that the state was somehow interfering with a parent's rights. I mean, what do you say to people who sort of take that view? Other than that they're wrong.
I was going to say, they don't understand the legal system. I mean, the way the system is set up, all the parties really need legal representation. And kids don't vote.
Right.
And so they don't get a voice in the system. And it's a somewhat paternalistic and frankly outdated view to ignore their voice in these things. And the court can ask them their opinion on things, but that's not the same thing as having legal counsel, as you well know, being an attorney. So,
well, I know in Virginia, and I don't do this work, many, many years ago, Steve Shannon, who was a delegate and then ran for Attorney General and then went back into legal practice, was recruiting lawyers to represent abused and neglected children. And he talked to me about it, and I was just like, I can't deal with that. It's just, to me, it is just such a horrendous circumstance that it just boggles my mind. But I know other people who represent these children in the Virginia court systems. Some of them are still with their families. So the system, when First Star is talking about legal rights and reforms, you're talking more broadly than just like the foster care system, or are you talking more generally?
Well, the whole family court system that determines whether a child is at risk staying with their natural family, and whether circumstances would change from time to time so that you could reunite them, because ideally you would want the family unit to be functional. Sometimes it's not possible, and that's when the kids end up in foster care. And the older they are, the less likely they are to be adopted. Mm-hmm. So if they can't be united, they end up on this course that leaves them in a very bad position. They'll age out of the system at the age of 21. 66% of the males who come out of the system by aging out will end up either homeless, in a mental institution, or incarcerated within 2 years of emancipation.
Oh my gosh.
And having watched my 22-year-old son just come home from college a few weeks ago and thinking what it would be like for him to come out with no resources and to find a job, a place to live, transportation, to look for a job without family structure and without finances. It's terrifying to think that we leave kids in that situation, but we do. And we pay for it down the road.
Well, I would think so, because we all talk about how expensive it is to take care of people who are in jail and this enormous cost, but yet we don't seem to step up at the front end where we might actually be able to impact some of these
Right.
kids. Now, let me step back a little bit, because people know foster care system is sort of the phrase, and you only hear about the foster care system when something horrible has happened and some child has gotten killed or abducted or something like that. In order to get into the foster care system, is that always something that happens through the court? Is that how that works?
It is. That is a legal status where the court has removed you from the jurisdiction of your natural family.
Okay.
And put you into the special system. There are a lot of other kids that are left without family. Mm-hmm. And in fact, when we started looking at the program locally here in Fairfax County, we discovered, working with the Fairfax County Public School System, that there are an awful lot of kids who are couch surfing. So they would be eligible.
What is couch surfing?
So picture a 15 or 16-year-old son or daughter of an illegal immigrant coming home from high school one day and discovering that their family has gone back because they were afraid of being, or just run away because they've been afraid of being sent back to their country. And so rather than getting into the system, the kids will go to friends' houses, and people will take them in and let them stay and go through high school that way. So they're not technically
Wow.
in the system, and they're just being sort of cared for by the community, which is a positive thing to say about the community as a
Right.
whole, but it's rather a a bad thing to say about our environment that,
Right.
that requires that sort of.
Well, you know, when you say that, I recall that when my younger son was in high school, he had a friend who turned 18 before he graduated from high school. And all of a sudden, he was living at my house. And I was kind of like, well, what happened that he's living here? And it was like, well, he turned 18, and his mother said, you're 18, you're out.
Yep.
And I was like, wow, that was a concept that frankly, I was like shocked, like, seriously? Somebody does that?
Hard to imagine that there are parents out there that do abuse and neglect their kids. But there are.
Well, one of the things that in foster care, so you haven't terminated the parents' rights necessarily. So these kids can't be adopted. They just get placed with families.
They might be. In some cases, they are eligible for adoption.
Okay.
I'm not an expert on what the distinguishing criteria are, but
Right.
but clearly a lot of them do get adopted by their foster families. But the older they get, the less likely that becomes.
Right. I would think so. Now, what happens with, because I saw something on that site that said some enormous percentage of abused and neglected children are under the age of 2.
Yes.
What is that? That just strikes me as, I mean, I understand, if you were to say to me, it's the teenagers, I would say, having raised 2 teenagers, I can understand that. But a baby? I don't get that. I mean, what is that?
Well, as you know, it doesn't require a license to be a parent.
Well, that's true.
And so there are people who have children that are not prepared to have children, either economically, emotionally, or even intellectually, to deal with the challenge of having little people around. And so they abdicate their responsibility. And it's a horrific thing, but it happens.
And are these children found because they've been ending up in emergency rooms? I mean, how does somebody find out that these really young children are being abused or neglected?
I think they're often reported by family or neighbors. I think that's probably the most common source, is somebody reporting them. The flip side of that is there are a lot of false alarms. One thing that dysfunctional families will do is one spouse will accuse another of abuse or neglect. And so if you looked at our statistics, you'll see there are several million reports of abuse and neglect, of which about 600,000 or 700,000 are investigated and determined that, in fact, there was abuse or neglect.
So it may be that the beginning of this system is the adult or the child protective service people. So I
Right.
think those are the ones that get called in if somebody's trying to report
They
it.
have to evaluate if it's a safe environment for the kids.
Wow, that's tough. And I must say, it takes a certain courage for somebody who's legitimately doing it to do it. But on the other hand, the ability to turn somebody on your spouse that you don't like is there. Stay with us. We're going to be right back.
Saving for retirement might be easy for some folk, but for others, it might take a little more work. And for those who haven't started, there are still things you can do to catch up.
Oh, that is good news.
Like getting out from underneath past debt. And don't get wrapped up with high-interest credit cards.
Get you some eyes.
Be diversified with your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Your financial goals are not out of reach. The choice is clear. For a happy ending, choose to save.
Everyone with alcohol and drug addiction is in the same boat. With treatment, you can find solid ground. For drug and alcohol information and treatment referral for you or someone you know, call 1-800-662-HELP.
Dude, are you sure you want this tattoo? Because just do it.
Some mistakes in life are permanent. Like hearing loss. To learn how to protect your hearing, visit asha.org.
You've probably heard about heart disease, but did you know that it's the #1 killer of women nationwide? Heart disease claims more lives each year than breast cancer, lung cancer, or strokes combined. But there are steps you can take to protect yourself against it. For more information on how you can prevent heart disease, contact your local American Heart Association or visit their website at www.americanheart.org.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I am Bettina Lawton, and tonight's show is about people doing good in our community to help the most vulnerable among us. And with me is Gary Levine. He is a board member of an organization called First Star. You can find out all about it by going to firststar.org. It's a fabulous website that Gary built through his own company. Well, I should say that because I was truly impressed by the amount of information on that website, and the links worked, which to me, a website link working is like a major deal. I'm not a professional. I only can do what I can do. Let's talk about some of this research, because we mentioned before the break that there are certain report cards and things like that that are sitting on the website talking about statistics. And I was surprised to discover that until relatively recently, and through the good work that First Star has been doing with some of its partners, that state laws are changing so that you can actually get information about children who are dying from abuse and neglect, or who have been seriously injured. And that information, state by state, is in these reports that you've got on the website.
Right, that's one of the report cards we do, assesses how each state does in terms of the transparency of statistics about deaths and near deaths. And some are very secretive about it. And on the surface, it is intended to protect the privacy of the families, obviously, for the kids who have died, not maybe the most important thing.
Right.
But the flip side of it is it does mask the problem. And even where we've recommended that states move towards more transparency, we always recommend that the court has the final say in whether or not some information would be released if there is some issue of privacy. But barring that ruling, then we should be able to get statistics that say how many of these, 30 kids a week that are dying in abused and neglected or neglecting families are happening in your jurisdiction.
Well, and I was surprised to see that it's like right around 2,000 kids a year that are actually dying from abuse and neglect.
Right.
And that was kind of like, wow. What surprised me, because we always think Virginia is so backward, is that Virginia actually has a higher score on the transparency than Maryland, which is usually considered to be a progressive jurisdiction, but apparently Maryland's not quite as forthcoming as they might be.
They're not, and they have been slow to react to recommendations that they have adopted in principle but not adopted in practice. So that's a challenge for us to walk that tightrope. I probably shouldn't say that on TV.
Well, you have, and it's live, so it's out there. Well, and I did find one of the statistics that I thought was really bad, and I don't think people who really understand the scope of the problem, that there are over 500,000 children who are considered seriously injured by abuse and neglect. This isn't some sort of minor problem. This is actually out there. There are a lot of children being impacted by this.
Right. Again, it's there's about 700,000 validated reports per year.
Wow.
Many of them, not many of them, but some of them can be resolved with the families. And so at this point in time, there's about 500,000 kids that are actually in foster care that have been removed from an abusive or neglectful home environment.
Wow. Well, I do want us to move to something a little bit more uplifting, because you are actually involved with academic help for these children, because as you said earlier, so many of them don't end up getting college degrees. So many of them, particularly the males anyway, end up in jail. That you all in First Star have started a program to try and help, is it get them into college, help them stay in college? Tell me about this program.
Getting them to college in the first place. So most of these kids have not been in an environment that fosters the reality that college is sort of an economic necessity, at least for a lot of careers. Certainly to have a good shot at a middle class or better kind of life takes a good education. And these kids are moved around from house to house. They don't have stability, and they don't have that kind of nurturing that says, we're going to make sure that after you get your high school academics behind you, you can move on and get the kind of education that you need to succeed in life. And we're trying to change that. So we had done some research. One of our fellows, a professor from the University of Southern California, San Diego, had suggested that we could help solve the problem by putting an environment on college campuses and bringing these kids into that environment, having them work with mentors from the college community and begin to see themselves in that kind of context. And out of that grew this First Star Foster Youth Academy program.
Well, we have a video on that I wanted to show. You sent me this 3-minute video, so we're going to do this. It was very moving, I must say. I was truly moved by it. So we are going to, I'm letting the folks in the control room know I'm about to start a video so they don't go, what in the world is that woman doing in there? So here it comes.
A quarter of foster kids are homeless after they age out of the system. A third of our girls and 2/3 of our young men end up in prison after aging out of foster care. Roughly a third of American 12th graders go on to get a bachelor's, but the comparable stat is 3% of foster kids.
My name is Rosario.
My name is Justin.
My name is Sarah. My name is Tiffany.
My name is Kenneth, and I attend the UCLA First Star Brewer and Gardner Scholars Academy.
The UCLA Guardian Scholars Academy is a program that supports students in high school who are in foster care.
We are an academic program in that we are trying to get our students to college, but I think the foundation of our program is that we are family.
We think we can dramatically increase the number of these kids who go to college and thrive in college.
These kids are our responsibility, and I feel that First Star is one of the few organizations that really respects them and honors them as full citizens and humans, deserving of all the rights and protections that we are lucky enough to have.
A word I would use to describe First Star would be a family.
The people who are here inspire me to be who I want to be. They inspire me to go to college. They inspire me to be open, to be able to share, just to be all that you can be.
I practically run up to hug everyone.
My parents would say they don't want me. And when I came here, it felt like family. For the first time I had something.
I have something to look forward to. I have an opportunity to get out of my group home and go back to my family.
I do feel completely safe here.
This is something that foster kids deserve.
My goals are to go through college, and I want to double major in kinesiology and language.
I'm thinking more about forensic science.
I want to teach people. That's what I want to do.
I want to become a veterinarian when I grow up.
I will be a student at UCLA, majoring in criminal minds or psychiatry. I don't know. I'm still deciding.
I will be graduating probably from UCLA with a master's or a bachelor's.
I'm a Bruin. When I graduate from high school, I'm coming to UCLA.
Every foster kid deserves a chance like this, to be around people who care about them so much. It's amazing.
Everybody has the chance to do whatever they want and has the opportunity to move on in life. And you don't have to worry about one less thing.
Well, there it is. I will say that the emotion expressed there of that this was a safe place. These were people who actually cared about them. Honestly, when the girl said my parents didn't want me, I was like, oh God, this is so horrible. How can people be this way? So the first one of these was set up in 2011, as I recall.
2012 was the first session. The kids you just saw in that video were a cohort of rising 9th and 10th graders, 30 of them. We brought them onto the UCLA campus. They stayed for 4 weeks in a sorority house, a retired sorority house.
Sorority houses can retire?
Yes, this was a retired sorority house. And put to good use, I might add. And so they got education, and they got, in fact, they all got 2 college credits for film classes they took. And they got a variety of other training and encouragement. And then after that residential part of the program, they went into a program where they meet 1 day a month, and then went back to the campus. We'll be going back to the campus this summer. We have a second one that is going into its second year at University of Rhode Island, and we're just starting up one here in Washington in conjunction with George Washington University. The residential program will be starting up in July.
So this year?
This year. And so we have our 30 kids selected, and it's exciting. For all the depressing statistics we've talked about, all you have to do is watch what happens when these kids get the opportunity to get your batteries charged. There's nothing wrong with these kids, as our founders want to say. It's we as a society are sort of their de facto parents if their natural parents are not able or willing to take care of them.
And the children get into the academy program through what? Recommendations of teachers? How does that work?
We do go to through the school systems and primarily through the social workers within the Child and Family Services organizations. The Greater Washington Group has come through DC and Fairfax County, and so we put notice out to the social work community and talked about what the criteria were, and they made the nominations, and then we went and interviewed them, and just some very special people.
So you're still sort of seeing how this works, since you've got it in 3 places, but they haven't all sort of graduated through high school yet to see how many of them go on. So this is really a work in progress.
It is, and we've invested a lot in the research and financial planning of this so that it is replicable, because ultimately it is something we'd like to see in every community, and we can't do it by running around and trying to raise money to pay for them privately in each case. But we would like to see them in 100 communities in the next 10 years.
That would be wonderful, because I do think that getting them, if you can see where you could go by going to, for George Washington University, and seeing what it's like and saying, there is a life for me out there, then it gives you something that you can actually sort of visualize and say, yeah, I could do that. I could really get there.
And that they're not locked out, because when they come to us, for the most part, they don't think that that's an option for them. Even if they had the vision of what other people can do, they don't think they're allowed to.
Wow.
And we empower them, and they rise to the challenge. It's a phenomenal thing to watch.
Well, Gary, I want to thank you for coming and talking to me tonight. I want to tell folks, go to firststar.org, as I said. Take a look at the site. It is a 501c3. You can make contributions. So thank you for coming, and thank you all for watching.
Thank you very much.